When we talk about life choices, there are these two huge concepts that just dominate everything, especially in your 20s and 30s: studying and working.
They really do.
And we're always comparing them, right? Worrying we're doing them in the wrong order or that we picked the wrong one to focus on.
And, that comparison, that's really the root of the whole problem. Your sources showed us that studying and working, they aren't just like two different activities you can swap in.
No, they're more like different blueprints.
Exactly. Two completely distinct architectures for how you structure your time, your money, even your identity.
So we did a deep dive into the stack you shared, and it was fascinating. Articles on everything from psychological stress in academia to, the real costs of changing your career midstream.
Right.
And our mission today isn't to say one is better. It's to pull out this core idea that these two roles, they just serve radically different needs at radically different times in your life.
And if you can just get your head around the fundamental operating system of each one, you can make choices that actually align with your goals.
Yeah.
Without all that anxiety of comparing apples to oranges.
Okay, so the basic idea is clear. One's for preparation, the other is contribution.
Yeah. But the how and the why of that difference, that's where the interesting stuff is.
All right, let's unpack that. Let's start with the big one: purpose and time. Why does one feel so much like it's about the future and the other feels like it's all about right now?
All about the payoff horizon. I mean, studying is just fundamentally structured for the future. Its goals are entirely long-term.
Like what specifically?
Well, you're gaining a foundational body of knowledge, you're developing abstract reasoning skills, and this is the big one, you're preparing for a career that maybe doesn't even exist yet. The reward is almost always delayed.
You're basically signing a contract for, what, 4, 5, maybe 8 years of just investing in your own abstract potential?
You are. And that delayed gratification, that is the hardest part for so many people. You can be putting in 12-hour days in the library.
Oh, I remember those days.
But the measurable benefit, the money, the stability, it's completely invisible for years. It creates this weird psychological tension.
Because your success is just grades, which are just indicators of future value, not present value.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that requires a ton of patience, a ton of trust in the system, even when you feel totally disconnected from the quote-unquote real world.
Okay, so working just flips that entire script.
Completely. It is intensely focused on the present. You're operating on a very, very short deadline clock. The goals are immediate, they're practical.
Earning a salary at the end of the month.
Yes, earning your monthly income, delivering a specific result, contributing something tangible to a company that exists right now. The satisfaction is quicker because it's tied to something concrete.
You close the deal.
You close the deal, you finish the report, you fix the broken system, you can point to it.
But doesn't that focus on the right now kind of limit your thinking? I mean, if I'm always scrambling to solve the problem that's due by Friday, I don't really have the headspace to think about the big theoretical reason the problem exists at all.
And that is the trade-off, 100%. Working builds this deep, practical competence through repetition and urgency.
Yeah.
And that's invaluable.
Here.
But the sources really highlight that this intensity often sacrifices that broad, theoretical deep dive that studying forces you to do.
It's like the difference between an engineer who understands all the physics and the master builder who just knows which beam works best from experience.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
One is theory for tomorrow, the other is practical results for today. Both are crucial, but they are not the same thing.
Okay, so if the time perspective sets the goal, then the daily architecture, the day-to-day, that sets the reality. This is where it gets really interesting, I think.
The structure, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's look at that first. Studying, on the surface, it seems really rigid.
Yeah.
You have fixed class schedules, exam dates you can't move.
Right, deadlines.
But inside that frame, students have this paradoxical amount of structural flexibility.
Yeah.
They have less financial responsibility, usually, which means the hours outside of class are pretty much their own.
Right. If I'm a night owl and I want to study from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., no one cares. As long as the work gets done, my lifestyle flexibility is actually huge.
Exactly. Now, compare that to the working architecture. Fixed hours are, well, they're non-negotiable because you're part of a team.
You're interdependent.
You have duties and expectations not just to a grade, but to other people, clients, colleagues. You're a cog in a bigger machine, so your lifestyle flexibility just plummets.
You can't just take Tuesday off to read a book.
Not without using vacation time, no. But in exchange, you get immense financial control. You get independence.
So the flexibility just shifts from your time to your money. But what about the psychological cost? Because the sources were really nuanced here. Both are stressful, but it's a totally different flavor of stress.
It really is. The stress of studying is. It's often generalized, it's pervasive, it's mentally challenging, it obviously peaks during exams, but the deepest stress is tied to this profound uncertainty about the future.
The existential stuff.
The existential stuff. Did I choose the right major? Is this degree actually going to pay off? Am I going to find a job? The sources call it the identity moratorium phase. You're preparing for an identity, but you don't actually have it yet. And that creates a lot of anxiety.
That makes so much sense. The fear isn't just about failing an exam. It's about failing the next 5 years of your entire life.
Precisely. Now, working stress is different. It's acute. It's defined. The stress comes from immediate, concrete responsibilities.
Hitting your sales goal.
Hitting the sales goal, managing a client crisis, a tight deadline from your boss. It's practical, immediate stress. And while it's taxing, it's rarely about the fundamental question of who you are. It's about performing the role you've already picked.
But couldn't that working stress just be masking a deeper problem? I mean, if I hate my job, isn't the stress of a quarterly review just a symptom of the bigger anxiety that I chose the wrong career?
That is a key point from the sources, yes. If a worker's stress becomes chronic and generalized like a student's, it's a sign of what they call an architectural misalignment.
Meaning what?
Meaning you're applying working stress performance, deadlines, to a fundamental choice that probably should have been sorted out back in the studying phase, like passion and alignment. And the stakes for changing course are so much higher now.
Because of that financial architecture you mentioned.
Because of the mortgage, the car payment, all of it.
Okay, so this brings up another point. If we're all supposed to be lifelong learners, how does the way we learn change when we switch from one system to the other?
This gets right to the theory versus practice divide. Studying is, at its core, learning by theory. It focuses on abstract concepts, models, historical context, controlled environments like a lab.
Case studies.
Case studies, exactly. And this builds that deep, layered understanding of why things work. You can visualize complex systems.
But then you have the classic complaint from every new graduate that they spend their first 6 months on the job unlearning everything because the textbook model just doesn't work in the real world.
And that's because working is learning by practice. It is all about immediate, real-world problems. The learning is messy, it's experiential, and it's focused on competence over, say, conceptual completeness.
You get really good at doing the thing.
You get incredibly confident in execution. But the trade-off is you often don't have the time or, frankly, the need to step back and figure out the grand theory behind it all. You know what works here in this company, but maybe not why it works universally.
So it's efficient learning, but it's also narrow learning. And that must have a huge impact on how we see ourselves, on our identity.
Absolutely. The framework and the sources on social life and identity is fascinating.
Yeah.
The student identity is all about being a learner, defined by potential. Society sees you as a work in progress.
Which gives you a certain kind of freedom.
A huge psychological and social freedom, yes. Your social life is usually really active. It's focused on your peers. But that in-progress status can also make your identity feel kind of shaky, uncertain.
You're being judged on what you could be, not what you are.
Whereas the worker identity is framed as a responsible adult, a contributor, an independent person. That identity feels stronger, more concrete.
Yeah, less up for debate.
Right. But the consequence is often that those fixed obligations we talked about, the structural demands, they cause your social life to shrink. Independence often comes at the cost of free time.
Okay, let's bring this all home. Let's talk about the bottom line, money, and the ability to change your mind. How does that financial architecture amplify all this pressure?
The financial piece is the heavy anchor in all of this. Students are operating on, limited income. You're dealing with scarcity, relying on family or loans. So their financial stress is this constant calculation.
Can I afford to go out this weekend? Can I buy this textbook?
Every single expense is a calculation of scarcity. They learn to manage these small, unpredictable budgets. The worker's calculation is completely different.
Right, you get a regular income, which feels like freedom, but then...
But then that freedom is immediately swallowed by responsibility. Mortgages, bills, maybe kids. Money stops being a scarcity problem and becomes an obligation problem.
It's independence, but it's also a kind of cage.
A cage or recurring obligations. And that obligation fundamentally changes how you view risk. For students, the pressure is this external fear of choosing the wrong future. For workers, the pressure is about losing the present
Career competition, performance reviews,
and the deep, profound fear of losing the income that holds that whole structure up.
which is why flexibility is so different. For a student, changing your major is a pain administratively, but it's financially possible, especially early on. The main cost is time.
But for a worker, changing paths is exponentially harder. You have sunk costs, all the time you've invested, the skills you've built, a salary you're used to.
And the real financial risk.
Huge financial risk. Walking away from a stable job to go back to school for 2 years is a massive, calculated gamble against your entire life structure. Your experience opens new doors, sure, but usually just small, incremental ones.
Big pivots require you to basically tear down the whole house you've built.
That's a great way to put it.
We have to quickly touch on the reality for a lot of our listeners, which is they're doing both at the same time. They're trying to live in both architectures.
And that combination, it builds incredible time management skills. The sources are clear on that. Employers love it, but it is an extreme stress multiplier.
I can imagine.
You're dealing with the generalized existential stress about your future and the acute practical stress of your present responsibilities simultaneously.
Yeah.
You're always pulling energy from two different, often conflicting places.
And you have neither the time flexibility of a full-time student nor the full financial freedom of a full-time worker.
It is an incredibly delicate balancing act, often a temporary necessity, but a very, very tough one.
So to pull this all together,
To synthesize it, I think the core insight has to be this. Studying and working are not opposites. They're not in competition. They're just different systems for different phases of your growth.
one builds the foundation, the other builds the experience.
Exactly. Studying builds that critical foundation of theory and mental flexibility. Working builds competence, confidence, and that hard-won wisdom that only comes from doing.
And the sources are clear. There's no right order, no perfect path.
Not at all. It's totally individualized. It depends on your personal tolerance for risk, your financial situation, your personality, the opportunities that pop up. The timing and the balance matter so much more than obsessing over which one is better.
So here is the final provocative thought for you to chew on this week based on everything we've talked about. A healthy life often includes continuous learning, right? We hear that all the time. But the worker is socially defined by their output, by their present contribution. So what structural or even psychological shifts would you, as a worker, need to make to truly adopt that theory-driven learner mindset of a student? Is it enough to just, take an online course?
Or do you have to intentionally dismantle some of the present-focused pressures of your job to make real space for the future-focused depth that studying provides?
Something to consider as you go about integrating both sides of this vital equation into your own life.